0530 hours. Baghdad Green Zone. Sergeant Mike Ramos woke up the same way he'd woken up every morning for the past 3 years. Screaming. The nightmare was always the same. The Humvee rolling through Fallujah streets. The call on the radio. Possible IED, route sword, grid coordinates. Tommy's voice, calm and professional. "We got this, Mike." Then the approach. The device sitting innocuous in the rubble. The wires. Always the wires. And then the explosion that should never have happened. Mike's eyes snapped open, heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Sweat soaked through his t-shirt, plastering it to his chest. His hands were shaking. They were always shaking now, trembling with the adrenaline that his body couldn't seem to turn off anymore. 45 years old, 22 years in the U.S. Army, Sergeant First Class, and he couldn't even sleep through the night. He sat on the edge of his bunk in the small, cramped quarters that smelled of stale air and diesel fuel. The pill bottle on his nightstand rattled as he reached for it with trembling fingers. Sertraline, 100 milligrams, prescribed for anxiety and PTSD. He'd stopped taking them 2 weeks ago. They made him foggy, disconnected, like he was watching his life through a film of Vaseline. And foggy got people killed, even if all you did these days was drive officers to meetings. His phone buzzed on the metal nightstand, the vibration unnaturally loud in the pre-dawn quiet. Text from Captain Morrison, Motor Pool. 0630, Officer Transport to Checkpoint Bravo. Route Irish. You're driving. Mike stared at the screen. Route Irish. The most dangerous road in Baghdad. The road they called IED Alley because of how many convoys got hit there every week. 3 years ago, he would have welcomed it. Would have been the first one suited up in the 80-pound bomb suit, ready to clear the route, ready to save lives. Now the thought of it made his hands shake worse. He stood slowly, joints protesting, and moved to the small mirror bolted above the sink. The face staring back looked older than 45. Gray streaked heavily through his dark hair. Deep lines carved paths around his brown eyes that had seen too much and couldn't forget any of it. And his hands never stopped shaking. Those hands used to be the steadiest in the EOD unit, used to defuse bombs with surgical precision, used to save lives. Now they could barely hold a coffee cup without spilling. On the wall next to the mirror was a photograph he should have taken down years ago, but couldn't bring himself to remove. Mike in full EOD gear, the heavy bomb suit, the helmet, the tools of his trade, standing next to Staff Sergeant Tommy Hayes and the rest of their team. All of them grinning like idiots after successfully clearing a complex IED network in Fallujah. December 2021, 2 weeks before Tommy died. Mike turned away from the photo, from the reminder of who he used to be, and started getting dressed. Standard Army combat uniform, motor pool patch. No EOD badge anymore. He'd put that away 3 years ago along with everything else. He was just a driver now, a chauffeur for officers who looked at him like he was broken, like he'd failed. Maybe he had. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Army Story so you never miss these true tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? The Baghdad sun was already brutal at 0645 hours when Mike pulled the Humvee up to the staging area. 3 young lieutenants waited, fresh-faced and confident in the way only people who hadn't seen real combat could be. They were headed to Checkpoint Bravo for a routine inspection. Standard officer business. Lieutenant Bradley Chen climbed into the back seat first, not even acknowledging Mike. His buddies, Lieutenants Marcus Webb and David Park, followed, all of them chatting casually like they were headed to brunch instead of the most dangerous road in Iraq. Mike adjusted the rearview mirror and started the engine. His hands trembled slightly on the wheel. "Hey, Ramos," Chen's voice cut through the cab, dripping with condescension. "Think you could manage to keep it under 60? Or is that too much math for a motor pool guy?" Laughter from the back seat. Mike said nothing, just drove. Eyes forward. Breathing controlled. In for 4, hold 4, out for 4. The therapist technique for managing anxiety. Webb leaned forward, his cologne too strong in the enclosed space. Seriously though, how does someone go from actual combat to driving officers around? What happened? You get scared. More laughter. I heard he requested the transfer himself, Park added, scrolling through his phone. Couldn't handle the pressure. Some guys just aren't built for it, I guess. Mike's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the steering wheel harder, trying to stop the tremor. The breathing exercises barely kept the anger down. Chen's voice took on a tone of false sympathy. Maybe he just realized he's better suited for support roles. Nothing wrong with that, right? Not everyone can be infantry. Not everyone has what it takes to. Contact front. The words came from the lead vehicle's radio, cutting Chen off mid-sentence. Mike's entire body went rigid. He knew that tone, knew what came next. Possible IED, route Irish, 200 meters ahead. All vehicles halt. Yodi en route. And then the world exploded. Boom. The lead Humvee, 50 meters ahead of Mike's vehicle, lifted 3 feet off the ground in a column of fire and dirt. The blast wave hit like a physical punch, rocking Mike's Humvee on its suspension, spidering the windshield with cracks. For one frozen heartbeat, there was only the ringing in Mike's ears and the taste of copper in his mouth. Then chaos. The lead vehicle flipped onto its side, metal screaming, wheels still spinning. Black smoke poured from the engine compartment. Flames licked at the undercarriage. Contact. IED. Vehicle down. Vehicle down. The radio exploded with panic voices. Chen was screaming in the back seat, his earlier arrogance vaporized by real violence. What the hell was that? Get US out of here. Drive. Drive. But Mike didn't move. His eyes were locked on something the young officers couldn't see. Something that made his blood run cold despite the Iraqi heat baking through the armor. Wires. Thin copper wires, barely visible in the dust and smoke, running from the blast crater across the road toward a pile of rubble 30 meters to the right. A secondary device. Standard insurgent tactic. The first IED stops the convoy, creates chaos, wounds soldiers. The second IED, larger, deadlier, waits for the rescue team, or for anyone stupid enough to approach the kill zone. Mike's hands, which had been shaking with PTSD tremors just seconds ago, went completely still on the steering wheel. His mind shifted, not consciously, not deliberately, but like a switch being flipped. The part of his brain that had been locked away for 3 years, the part that knew bombs, that understood explosive devices the way other people understood breathing, suddenly came online. Pressure activated or command detonated. The wires suggested command, which meant someone was watching, waiting. Blast radius? Based on the crater size and wire thickness, probably 155 millimeter shell. Maybe 20 meter kill radius, 40 meter casualty radius. Time to detonation? Unknown. Could be seconds, could be minutes. Depended on the triggerman's patience. Everyone out, Mike said quietly. Chen grabbed his shoulder from behind. What? Are you insane? We need to. Mike's voice cut like a blade, carrying authority that made all 3 lieutenants freeze. I set out, away from the vehicles, 50 meters back. Now, that's a secondary IED. We're sitting in the kill zone. How do you know? Move. The command voice, the voice Mike hadn't used in 3 years, brooked no argument. All 3 officers scrambled out, stumbling in their haste. Mike opened his door more slowly, his eyes never leaving the wires. He reached under the driver's seat and pulled out a small toolkit, the kind no motor pool driver should have, the kind he'd kept hidden for 3 years because he couldn't quite let it go. Wire cutters, needle nose pliers, a small multimeter, a flashlight, the basics. His hands weren't shaking anymore. Ramos, what the hell are you doing? Webb shouted from behind the Humvee. Mike didn't answer. He was already moving toward the device, his mind calculating angles, blast patterns, trigger mechanisms. From the burning lead vehicle, someone was screaming, wounded, trapped. Time was running out, and Sergeant Mike Ramos, the broken driver they'd mocked, was walking straight toward the bomb. Fallujah, Iraq, December 14, 2021. Staff Sergeant Mike Ramos knelt in the dirt beside what looked like a pile of garbage, but was actually a sophisticated IED network. 3 devices daisy-chained together, designed to take out an entire patrol. "Talk to me, Mike," Staff Sergeant Tommy Hayes said from the safe zone 20 meters back. Tommy was his number 2, his spotter, his best friend. "What are we looking at?" "Triple stack," Mike replied, his hands moving with absolute confidence. No tremor, no hesitation. Pressure plate primary, command det backup, anti-tamper on the 3rd. Clever bastards. "Can you beat it? Does the Pope shit in the woods?" Tommy laughed. "That's not how that's saying. Give me 5 minutes." 4 minutes and 30 seconds later, all 3 devices were neutralized. Mike stood, stretched his back, and walked calmly back to the team. Tommy grinned, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's 207 for you, brother. You're a goddamn artist." "Just doing my job." They'd grabbed lunch after. MREs in the shade of a Humvee, talking about home, about Tommy's kid who'd just turned 3, about Mike's plans to finally take that leave he'd been putting off. 10 days later, they got the call. Another IED. Routine by end-of-day standards. Mike was off duty, catching up on paperwork. Tommy took the call. "I got this one," Tommy had said, grinning. "You've been hogging all the fun." The device was supposed to be simple. Single pressure plate. Standard insurgent build. Tommy had done hundreds just like it, but this one was different. This one had a hidden anti-tamper mechanism that the X-ray missed. Mike was 50 meters away, reviewing grid coordinates, when the explosion turned the world white. When his vision cleared, Tommy was gone. Just gone. And Mike's hands had been shaking ever since. Mike's boots crunched on the debris-strewn asphalt as he approached the secondary device. Behind him, he could hear Chen and the others shouting, telling him to stop, to wait for the actual EOD team. But the screams from the burning vehicle were getting weaker, and the EOD team was 15 minutes out. Those soldiers didn't have 15 minutes. Mike followed the wires to their source, a pile of rubble that had been carefully arranged to look natural. Underneath, partially buried, was the device. 155 millimeters artillery shell. 2 of them actually wired together. Command detonated just as he'd suspected. The trigger wire ran into a building 40 meters away where the insurgent was probably watching through a window, waiting for the right moment, which meant moving the wrong wire would send the signal to detonate. Mike knelt beside the device, setting down his toolkit. His hands were absolutely steady now. The tremor that had plagued him for 3 years had vanished the moment he touched the first wire. Muscle memory, training, hundreds of hours of practice taking over. He breathed slowly, assessing. 2 shells, 4 wires visible, probably 2 more hidden underneath for anti-tamper. The detonators would be housed in the nose cones, accessible if he could. Ramos. Captain Morrison's voice cut across the distance. The EOD team commander had arrived with the quick reaction force, but they were still positioning, still assessing. Mike didn't look up, couldn't look up. Losing focus now meant death. Ramos, step away from the device. That's an order. 8 minutes, Mike called back, his voice calm. The wounded have 8 minutes, maybe less. I'm already here. I can do this. You're a driver. You're not cleared for. I'm EOD, Mike said quietly, almost to himself. I've always been EOD. His hands moved, reaching for the wire cutters. Lieutenant Chen, crouched behind the Humvee, whispered to Webb, "What the hell is he talking about?" Morrison's voice came over the radio, tight with realization. "Jesus Christ. Ramos. Staff Sergeant Michael Ramos. EOD Team 7. I read your file when I took command, but I thought." "You thought I was broken," Mike finished, cutting the first wire with surgical precision. "You thought PTSD made me useless. The device didn't detonate. Good. 1 wire down. You had 200 successful defusals," Morrison said, his voice different now. "You were one of the best in theater. Then Fallujah. The incident with Tommy Hayes." Mike's voice was flat, controlled. "My best friend. He died because I wasn't there. Because I let him take a call that should have been mine. Second wire. Cut. Still good. That wasn't your fault, Sergeant. Felt like it was. Mike reached for the third wire, then paused. Something wasn't right. The configuration was off. He leaned closer, shining his flashlight into the gap between the shells. There, a pressure release mechanism hidden underneath. The anti-tamper he'd been expecting. If he cut wire 3 without releasing the pressure first, both shells would detonate. Got a pressure release, he muttered. Need to access from underneath. His hands, those hands that had shaken every morning for 3 years, moved with absolute confidence. He reached into a gap barely wide enough for his fingers, found the release mechanism, and slowly, carefully applied counterpressure. Click. The mechanism disengaged. Clear, he breathed. Now, wire 3, then 4. Then carefully extract the detonators while maintaining pressure so the backup trigger didn't. Crack. A bullet struck the ground 2 inches from Mike's hand. The insurgent in the building had gotten impatient. More gunfire erupted. Rounds kicked up dirt around Mike's position. The quick reaction force returned fire, but the shooter had good cover. Ramos, get down. Morrison screamed, but Mike couldn't get down. Couldn't move. Not now. Not when he was this close. Moving meant the device would detonate. Meant the wounded would die. Meant Tommy's death would still be meaningless because Mike hadn't learned anything, hadn't moved past the fear. So he stayed, hands steady, mind focused, blocking out the gunfire, blocking out the screaming, blocking out everything except the wires in front of him. Wire 3, cut. Wire 4, cut. Now, the detonators. He needed 2. A bullet whipped past his head, so close he felt the sonic crack. I've got the shooter, a voice said over the radio. One of the QRF snipers. Taking the shot. Crack. The insurgent fire stopped. Mike didn't even notice. He was carefully extracting the first detonator, using the needle-nose pliers to grip the casing without disturbing the... It slipped. For one terrible heartbeat, the detonator shifted in its housing, the firing pin moving toward the primer. Mike's hand shot out with pure instinct, catching it, stabilizing it, holding it perfectly still while his other hand worked the pliers back into position. His heart was hammering. Sweat poured down his face, but his hands didn't shake, not even a tremor. Got it, he whispered. First detonator out, then the second, then the backup triggers, then the anti-tamper mechanisms. 5 minutes after he'd started, Sergeant Mike Ramos stood, holding 2 disarmed detonators in his hands. The device was safe. The convoy was safe. Behind him, silence. Then, applause. The QRF, the officers, even Morrison. They were clapping. Some were cheering. Mike turned, blinking in the harsh sunlight. His hands, finally, blessedly, were still steady. Lieutenant Chen stepped forward, his face pale. We didn't know. I'm sorry. We shouldn't have. Help them. Mike cut him off, gesturing to the burning vehicle. Get the wounded out. That's what matters. As the medics rushed forward, Mike walked slowly back to his Humvee. His toolkit felt heavier than it should. Or maybe he felt lighter. Morrison approached, his expression complicated. Sergeant Ramos, that was... I don't have words. Mike set down the toolkit, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion. Just doing my job, sir. Your job is driving the motor pool. My job, Mike said quietly, meeting the captain's eyes, has always been saving lives, even when I thought I couldn't anymore. An hour later, the convoy was secure. The wounded were stable, and Sergeant Mike Ramos sat on the tailgate of his Humvee, drinking water that tasted like dust and redemption. Captain Morrison approached with a folder. I pulled your complete file, the classified parts. Mike said nothing. 207 successful IED defusals. Distinguished Service Medal. Bronze Star with Valor Device. You were recommended for the EOD Memorial Wall. You're a legend in the community. Was, Mike corrected quietly. The incident in Fallujah. Staff Sergeant Hayes. Your best friend. The report says he was killed by an anti-tamper device you didn't detect. Mike's hands tightened on the water bottle. There it was. The accusation he'd been carrying for 3 years. It wasn't your fault, Morrison continued. The investigation cleared you. The X-ray equipment malfunctioned. There was no way to. I should have been there, Mike said, his voice rough. Tommy took that call because I was doing paperwork. If I'd been there, I would have caught it. I always caught them. You can't save everyone, Sergeant, but I should have saved him. Silence fell between them. In the distance, helicopters thundered overhead, carrying the wounded to better medical care. Morrison sat down next to Mike. You requested the transfer to motor pool. Medical said you had severe PTSD, anxiety, depression. Your hands shook so badly you couldn't pass the physical requirements. They still shake, Mike admitted. Every morning, every night. Sometimes I can't even hold a coffee cup, but not when you were defusing that device. Mike looked down at his hands. They were shaking again now. The tremor back. The damage still there. No, he said quietly. Not then. You know what that means? Mike shook his head. Morrison's voice was gentle. It means you're not broken, Sergeant. You're hurt. There's a difference. Broken things can't function. Hurt things. He gestured to where the defused IED sat, surrounded by end-of-day techs examining Mike's work. Hurt things can still do what they're built to do, when it matters most. 3 weeks later, Mike stood in front of Captain Morrison's desk at a different kind of attention. Not rigid, not fearful, just ready. I spoke with the EOD command, Morrison said. They want you back. Full reinstatement. Full rank restoration. But there are conditions. Sir, therapy. Real therapy. Not just pills. You talk to someone. Process what happened. Deal with the PTSD the right way. Mike nodded slowly. I can do that. And you work with a partner. Always. No more solo defusals. Tommy wouldn't want you carrying this alone. The mention of Tommy's name hurt, but it was a clean hurt, like pressing on a healing wound to make sure it was still mending. Understood, sir. Morrison stood, extended his hand. Welcome back, Staff Sergeant Ramos. EOD needs you. And those kids you saved? They're telling everyone about the driver who turned out to be a hero. Mike shook his hand. I'm no hero, sir. Just a soldier who remembered how to do his job. 2 months later, Mike suited up in EOD gear for the first time in 3 years. The bomb suit felt familiar, like an old friend. Heavy, protective. Right. His new partner, a young sergeant named Rivera, watched nervously. Sir, your hands. They shake, Mike finished. PTSD. It's not going away. I've learned to work with it. Will it affect your work? Mike smiled. Watch. He knelt beside the training device, a dummy IED set up for practice. His hands trembled as he reached for the wires. Then, the moment he touched them, the tremor stopped. Muscle memory, purpose, the thing he was born to do. When it matters, Mike said quietly, they remember. He defused the training device in under 3 minutes. Perfect technique. 0 mistakes. Rivera stared. That was, how did you? Practice, Mike said, standing. And remembering that I'm not defined by what broke me. I'm defined by what I do after. That night, alone in his quarters, Mike pulled out the photograph of Tommy and his old team. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't look away. I'm back, brother, he said softly. I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm back. His hands were shaking. They probably always would be. But that was okay, because hands that shake can still save lives. And Mike Ramos was finally ready to save lives again. Being broken and being hurt are not the same thing. We all carry scars. We all have moments that shatter us. But those moments don't define us. What defines us is what we do when the moment calls. When lives depend on us stepping up despite the fear, despite the trauma, despite the hands that shake. Sergeant Mike Ramos taught those young officers a lesson they'd never forget. Never judge a soldier by their current assignment. Never assume someone is broken just because they're wounded. And never forget that the most powerful form of courage isn't the absence of fear. It's showing up anyway. The hands that shake can still save lives. If this story moved you, salute in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Army Story for more true military stories of valor, sacrifice, and redemption. Until next time, stay strong, keep fighting, and remember, you're not defined by what broke you. You're defined by what you do after.